Hi friends, and welcome to another video. I hope you guys are all doing well. Today we are going to be looking into a case that is coated in hearsay, but is a super popular story that happened to a family in the United States in the 1800s. The Bell Witch is a legend that is intertwined in folklore from the southern United States, becoming one of the most popular and long-lasting legends passed down from generation to generation in Tennessee, which revolves around the Bell family, who lived in Robertson County, Tennessee, in the 19th century. John Bell was born in 1750 and had married Lucy in 1782, where they had 9 children. In 1804, John and Lucy owned 320 acres of farmland against the Red River, and because of this, John had amassed quite a bit of wealth from his endeavors and became very well respected within the community. Another family that lived in the area were the Bats, and the man of the house, Frederick, became severely injured from a farming accident, and the family ended up having to sell pieces of their farmland in order to make ends meet, where John Bell actually bought some of this land for a very low cost, much less than what it was actually worth, and John definitely took advantage of the situation. Frederick's wife, Kate, was not pleased about this transaction and believed that her family had been gypped out of some good money that they desperately needed. And this prompted Kate to swear over her deathbed that John Bell would pay for what he had done, and that she would haunt him and his family. Following this, John decided to be even more of a stand-up individual and purchased a slave from Frederick Bat's brother, Benjamin. And the slave ended up being a young girl, so John suggested that she stay and live with her mother until she was old enough to be a slave, I guess. Eventually, John went to go and collect her, and by this time, she had grown up, she was able to work. And Benjamin said that this girl was worth a lot more now, so he attached a bigger price tag onto this human being. But John said that he'd already paid for her when she was younger at the price they'd originally agreed upon, so he just took her. So obviously at this point, the Bells and the Bats were not getting along. The Bats family basically thought that John's sole purpose in life was to take advantage of others who were less fortunate and would do anything to save a penny for his own gain. And while much of the community rallied with the Bats over John Bell's treatment toward their family and subsequently lost a lot of respect for John Bell and the Bells in general, a lot of the community were not very fond of Kate Bats. To them, she was headstrong, outspoken, loud, controlling, tough, and since Frederick was disabled from his accident, she became the head of the house, which didn't sit right with a lot of people because gender roles, and it got to the point where people began to see her as a witch, which of course she was going to be seen as that because these types of women in that time who were going against the grain in any sort of way were seen as a witch, with some of them even being executed for it. But back to the Bell family, nothing really happened to them. Karma did not catch up with them, and they lived at their farm for 13 years without incident. And then our story really begins. The legend goes that from 1817 to 1821, the Bell family and others in the area as well started being plagued with hauntings from an entity that could speak, move things around, but would never be seen. There were accounts of this entity being clairvoyant and even being able to be in 2 places at once. In 1894, a newspaper editor named Martin V. Ingram published a book regarded as the first full-length record of this Bell Witch legend, called The Authenticated History of the Bell Witch, though there are those nowadays who see his work as being completely made up, although his story does reflect that of the folklore that people would have believed back in those days. This legend has even been adapted into modern mediums like movies and music, and it's just a very popular legend. But what is this legend even about, you may be asking? Well, we are about to dive into just that. According to the legend, the activity started in 1817, when John believed that he had seen the ghost of a dog on his property before it disappeared. But the thing about this dog was that apparently it had what looked like the face of a rabbit. So all of this activity was outside the house at this point, just on the property. But then it progressively started to move closer to the house. The family began hearing knocking on the door and on the walls, which progressed to then hearing invisible dogs fighting in the hallways and chains scraping across the floor. Then it started to get physically closer to the family members. The sheets were being pulled off the children at night as they slept. The children's hair was getting pulled, and one of the daughters, Betsy, in particular, would be slapped, pinched, and even stuck with pins, and reportedly would see lights flashing in the fields outside. John, meanwhile, began experiencing feelings of swelling in his throat, like there was a stick stuck inside of it. So this was very concerning, as the entity was starting to get violent at this point, and was really beginning to take away the family's feelings of safety. And this was when the ghost started to speak. On one particular occasion, they asked the ghost, "Who are you and what do you want?" To which a voice quietly replied, "I am a spirit. I was once very happy, but I've been disturbed." And the family actually kept this haunting to themselves for about a year before enlisting the help of a family friend named James Johnston, who agreed to spend the night at the Bell family home to experience for himself what the family was saying was happening to them. And with things like this, I feel like things never happen, activity never occurs, and the family just ends up looking crazy. But in this case, apparently James experienced just as much paranormal activity as the family endured on a regular basis. And so word began spreading about the hauntings occurring at the Bell home. And while many people were scared about the idea of an entity inflicting harm upon this family, there were people who were intrigued by this idea and would flock to the Bell home from all over the area in order to try to experience for themselves the phenomena that was said to have been taking place there. As the Bell Witch began gaining more and more popularity and would essentially have more people to talk to, she was seemingly getting stronger and would eventually start referring to herself as Kate Batts, who, if we remember, was the wife of the neighbor of John's who he had gypped out of giving the family the proper amount of payment for the land he had bought from them, with Kate then saying that she was going to haunt his entire family. The thing is, though, there were different accounts saying that, for one, Kate was dead and was actually physically haunting the family as a ghost, and then there were others who believed that Kate was still alive and was somehow projecting herself from her own home to the Bell family's home, so like haunting them from afar, and that's why nobody ever saw her. But again, there isn't even really any proof that this story actually happened, so I'll leave it up to you to decide what you believe. The ghost began talking at length about how there was a Native American burial ground on the property and that it had been disturbed. She would have full-on conversations about the religion and could quote texts from the Bible. She also liked to gossip about what other families were up to, and would even disappear for a few minutes at a time, seemingly to visit other homes. And this whole thing is just mind-boggling to me because, assuming for a second that this is actually a real story, how often do you hear of a spirit who will have full-on conversations with you, would get into debates with you, and would even joke around with you from time to time? I've personally never heard of any sort of spirit behaving that way in all of the books and movies and things that I've experienced and stories from others that I've heard, so it's very interesting to me that the Bell Witch appeared to have this very vibrant personality. Not everyone was so quick to accept the Bell Witch haunting as truth, however, as John Johnston, the son of James, came up with a test for the Bell Witch that no one outside of his family would be able to know the answer to. So if the ghost got this right, then it would be confirmation to him. John Johnston asked the spirit what his step-grandmother would say to the slaves if she thought they had done something wrong, to which the ghost responded in his grandmother's accent, quote, "Hut hut, what has happened now?" The Bell Witch wasn't mean to everyone though, and was actually kind toward Lucy, John's wife, and would give Lucy fresh fruit and sing songs to her. But for the other members of the family, well, they did not receive the same amount of kindness from the Bell Witch. She would refer to John Bell as Old Jack and intended to kill him. She wanted him dead, which she would try constantly to do through curses and threats. And the Bell Witch was also not pleased about Betsy wanting to get engaged to a local boy named Joshua Gardner, whom she was absolutely in love with, but she could only endure so much more of the torture she and her family were being exposed to from the witch. So in 1821, after experiencing all the abuse, honestly, from this entity, she called off her engagement to Joshua. Shortly after that, the Bell Witch told the family that she would be leaving, but would return in 7 years. And when those 7 years had passed, she did return to the family and started to exhibit some of the same haunting behavior that she was doing to them before. But this time, the family chose to pretty much ignore her. And so Kate said that she would then return in 107 years, so in 1935, but some people believe that Kate never returned to the Bell house. In other versions of this story, newspapers in Boston and Vermont in the 1850s published an article about the Bell Witch by an unidentified author that stated the events of the Bell Witch haunting took place nearly 30 years prior to when the article had been written. The story contained Mr. Bell, Betsy Bell, and Joshua Gardner, and in this version, the ghost spoke all the time inside the house whenever she wanted, but would only make herself visible when all the lights were turned off at night. The ghost said that she would stay in the house until Joshua and Betsy got married. Then I guess Betsy learned how to be a ventriloquist and tried to use this to impress Joshua to marry her, but they never did, though eventually the ghost apparently did disappear. There are even reports of people trying to use the Bell Witch as a scapegoat in order to get away with their crimes of murder. And then General Andrew Jackson, who later became president, apparently even spent the night at the Bell Witch house in 1819 after hearing about what had been going on there when 3 of the Bell's sons had served under him in the army. Odd things started happening right away as they entered the property, such as their carriage wheels getting stuck, their horses refusing to go any further. They were going to be setting up tents and spending the night outside on the property. So they went inside, met up with the Bell family, got settled, had some dinner, and had a fairly normal night. That was until later on, one man from Andrew Jackson's crew brought up the fact that it was interesting there had been no activity inside the house at this point. Everyone agreed, and the man said that this was because he had what he described as a witch tamer, which was a pistol with a silver bullet inside, which he said could kill any evil spirit that the bullet came into contact with. So that's why the ghost wasn't showing herself to them. And pretty much right after he said this, the man began screaming and contorting his body in different positions, feeling as though he were being beaten and stuck with pins. And then he got a nice kick in the crotch and was thrown toward the door, with the ghost speaking to Andrew Jackson next, saying that this man was a fraud, that he was no good, and that there was another one in his crew, and that she was going to show all of them who it was the following night. After they left, Andrew Jackson was quoted as saying that he would rather face the entire British Army than to spend another night with the Bell Witch. And at this point, John was getting more and more beaten down by the witch. And by this I mean that he was getting sicker and weaker, to the point where he began experiencing paralysis in his face. And on December 20th of 1820, when he was 70 years old, his cause of death was deemed to be death by supernatural forces, where the Bell Witch had poisoned him, with Kate taking all of the credit for it, so that there was no other suspicion surrounding how and why he had died, with Kate apparently even showing up at John's funeral, interrupting it by laughing hysterically and singing drinking songs. The Bell house was actually torn down in the late 1800s due to how many visitors were coming to the farm to try and see or experience anything spooky for themselves. A cabin was constructed that houses some of the original items from the Bell home that you can tour, along with a Bell Witch cave on the property, which people also note experiencing odd feelings in there as well, with some people reporting that they feel this overwhelming sense of unease, that they should not take anything, even a simple pebble, from the cave. At one point, it said that a guy visited the cave and did take a rock home with him as a souvenir. And that's when a series of unfortunate events happened to him. He lost his home, his job, and his wife died. Today, if you visit the area, it's said that you can hear sounds of invisible conversations, children playing, as well as candle lights dancing in the fields at night. A descendant of John Bell named Robert Bell said that odd things still happen within his family even to this day, such as when he was a boy, he remembered going over to his grandmother's because she thought there had been an intruder in the house. And when the family arrived, they saw that this cabin in the kitchen that was always locked, that held her best china, had been thrown onto the floor, but weirdly enough, nothing was broken. In pop culture, the films An American Haunting and The Blair Witch Project, as well as The Bell Witch Haunting, are all said to have been based on the story of the Bell Witch. So I would love to know what you guys think about this Bell Witch haunting. I know it's a very popular topic, but I really wanted to look into it for myself and see if I could discover any other details surrounding the Bell Witch. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please let me know your thoughts on it, if you believe in the Bell Witch, if you have heard any other stories about it. And as always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!